I think just diving into the preparation, what you started with, and then how did you progress, and what were you trying to accomplish in the early parts of your preparation?
Yeah, so for me, with this being a marimba concerto, and actually my first time doing a marimba concerto with an orchestra, my main concern was execution and not losing my place. So what I really focused on that foremost. And so how I used the app right away is I split it into two sections. So I used the Etude section of your app, and I broke it into Ewazen Part 1 and Ewazen Part 2. It was like half the piece in Part 1. There were 6 sections I would practice, and then half the piece in Part 2, 6 sections that I would practice in there. And I really spent a lot of time, not even half tempo, I would say like 25% tempo, and I would do one chunk, and then you know how it increases by 4%. I would do one chunk 2 or 3 times, and then I would go to the next tempo 2 or 3 times, and then the next tempo. Because again, I'm focusing on just making sure that no matter what, I knew exactly what the chord was, I knew exactly where the shifts were, and because this concerto is so difficult because it's not a marimba concerto, it's like a harp concerto, I wanted to make sure I knew where I was going. So I started, I would say the end of September, early October is when I started that, and 25% tempo, and I did the 2-week cycle, and then I repeated it again, and then I repeated it again, and slowly started faster. So I would say like 25%, and then I would say the next one was like half, and then it would be like 75, 80. And then once we got about 2 months out, I think I was in like the 85 to 90% or so. And I started to do longer chunks. So I would do like an A chunk and a B chunk together. And then I would do like a B chunk going into a C chunk, and then like A to C. And I call it compounding practice. I think you and I have talked about this before. So it's kind of how I already do things, but I just used your app to go, okay, I already have defined an A, already defined B and C. I'll do A to B, cool. Now I'll do B going into C, great. Now I'll do A to C. C going into D, A to D, and I spent a month doing that and basically piecing the piece together. And then I would say a month out, actually 2 weeks out, your episode with your wife came out. The 1% episode, I think is what it's called.
Yep.
Your wife was talking about, what is the variations piece? I forget.
The Heinostera.
Yeah, and how crazy it is for clarinet, and how that she, a couple weeks out, was doing like worst case scenario runs, and I was like, oh yeah, that's like a thing that we can do. I forgot about that. And so the last month or last couple of weeks, I started to do worst case scenario, like what if they go slow, what if it go too fast, like can I make it through, that sort of thing. So that's kind of an overview of what I did.
Another aspect we have to talk about first, how do you get the image in your head, or your mental representation, or your whatever, your musical concept? How do you develop that? And then the other question is, how do you go about using the process itself to move closer to that? How are you saying, this is what I sound like, I'm going to use the repetitions to move myself closer to what I want to sound like in the end?
So I'm going to start with the first part and redirect me. So as far as this piece is concerned, I knew who it was written for, and I had the recording, like the definitive recording of like, this is She, this is her recording, this is what it sounds like. So I kind of based a little bit off that, but also just deep diving on YouTube. So I guess listening is the big one, and developing my sound is like, I'm always trying to get better, and like as I practice, I am seeing, okay, I play on this edge of the bar with this mallet, it gets this sound. But I already have a concept of like what I wanted. I wanted the tone to be like pure and like crystal clear, like no matter what, you can hear across the board that this is it, round, and like right in your face. And so I selected mallets, and I played the bars a certain way to always make sure that when I hit them, it's a round sound. It's not like sharp and like dirty, but just like a big sound that comes right at your face. So that's kind of what I've wanted as far as sound concept, and that's how I play in general, or at least I try to. If we back up to how I first started learning the piece, I set a goal of like making sure no matter what, I knew where I was, and like the shifts and the body movement up the instrument was always the same. So if we go with that idea, that was my main goal. So if we start back at like my first round with the Method app at like 25% tempo, my main goal during that time was accuracy and body placement. So for us, the piece is really difficult because it's all these piano type chords that go up the instrument, and nothing is the same ever. And so normally we have patterns that we memorize and we play up and down. This is not like that. There's very few of those. So I made sure at the very beginning dynamics didn't matter. Everything was at forte, all big strokes, and I can explain why later. And I made sure that I was shifting. I hit a note, shifted, froze, struck another note, shifted, froze, struck another note. And I did that over and over again so my body would memorize this very awkward situation. And then when you play it on piano, it's not that bad. It's like just a B minor and whatever, but when you do it here, it really matters. Like 1 inch to the left or right is a wrong note. And there's gravity between us and the instrument. So we don't touch our instrument. It's not a part of us. So I made sure that, okay, here, shift, here, shift. That was all of the first 2 sessions through the Method app. So a good month and a half was just doing that sort of practice. And as I'm doing it, when I'm not practicing, it was like every other day or every 2 or 3 days, I was listening back to the piece and making mental decisions on what I was going to do in the 5th, 6th version through the app. So that was like step 1, big strokes, making sure all the body movement is there, and then transition work. So that's the other thing I do a lot. So I'll transition from a phrase into the next one. So if, I would go from section A to section B, and I would do like 2 or 3 bars of section B, and then I would just loop that over and over again. So that's how I started that. As far as the musical decisions after that, so like the 3rd and 4th round through the app, I started to incorporate the dynamics. So once I had the power and the physical ability to play the loud chords how I wanted, then I started to shape. And so everything I've been listening at this point started to come into play. I'm like, okay, I'm going to drop here, I'm going to phrase here. And during the repetitions, I would say, okay, if I did one all the way up and I missed a note, not the end of the world. If I got the musical idea across, if I didn't get what I wanted across at all, and I nailed it, that didn't matter either. I had to redo it again. So I'd go back to those 4, you get 4 times through, and I would say, okay, number 1, I'm going to try to play musically. If I miss 1 or 2 notes, not the end of the world. If I did that, cool, punch. If I missed the musicality part, it didn't matter how many notes. And if I missed all of it, obviously it's terrible. So